There are two kinds of histories of Europe at the moment. One particular history of Europe is a history of European integration. It means that we read about the institution building after the Second World War, the treaties, common market, so economic interests, business, but this is far away from the citizens, of course. They have no real relationship to this, and this also comes out in voting. People cannot really think about, relate to Europe. There's another kind of history of Europe, which is a history of nation state. It basically means that you get a history of France, history of the UK, history of Spain, maybe some bit of history of Poland, but not a lot most of the time. So it's very unbalanced, these kind of histories. But there is also another kind of history of Europe possible. This is a history of relationships between people. So in Inventing Europe, we will follow how people have built Europe to write a new kind of history of European integration through the lens of technology. The added value of looking through the lens of technology is that it brings to the fore another actor. And the actor is the engineer, because in many histories we have politicians, we have business, we have maybe consumers, but we don't have the engineer. So history of technology makes visible that engineers have been important in constructing a material infrastructure in many ways for a new Europe. However, these infrastructures do not stay within the realm of the engineers. They are used, and they have a huge impact in daily life, because people start to explore and use and communicate all the artifacts and infrastructures produced by the engineers and start to provide meaning to it. In Inventing Europe, we think, and that's the kind of assumption, that by working and reworking material life, you also influence economic development, political developments, cultural developments, and this is precisely what we want to study. One of the questions in the project is if this will change our picture of history. Inventing Europe will explore European history in four areas. The first area is infrastructures, so then you have to think about energy infrastructures, gas lines, electricity networks, communication networks, telephone, internet, radio, transport, railway, road. So that's one area. The second area is knowledge. So what you can see in European history is a emergence of European big projects. The nation states wanted to compete with the United States or with Russia, for example, in big military projects or projects in space or airplanes. Airbus is a typical example. But you also see the emergence of knowledge networks, European knowledge networks among city planners, agricultural scientists, consumer groups, and they have to develop European standards, for example. So that's the second area we will explore in Inventing Europe. The third area is consumption. In Europe, consumers developed specific ways of adopting and using all kinds of consumer products, partly imported from the United States, and they had to develop a response to that. And through this response and studying this response, you can get a sense of what it meant to be European. The fourth area, it's also very important, is that Europe in a global world. Because I think you can only study Europe and get an understanding of Europe if you put it in a global context. Because Europe has often been generated and understood in relation to the United States, to its colonies. There they found out what Europe meant. For example, Dutch people call themselves Europeans in the Dutch Indies. Because there they felt different from local people, and they used the notion of Europe for this. Also because they attached to it a feeling of superiority. And also, of course, also I think a racist understanding of the developments in the world. And so Europe in this context started to become connected to technology, superiority, and in a way an understanding of Europe as leading in the world. The official slogan of the EU when they talk about the history of Europe is unity in diversity. And of course this is a kind of paradox. It's a paradox that